Take your seats, movie fans. The film is about to start. Welcome to Craft of Services, the show where we look back at the bad films of cinematic history, the movies that critics rejected but audiences embraced. I'm your host, Aaron Coker. I'm also the host of the Just Enough Trope podcast and the Enterprising Individuals podcast on this, the Just Enough Trope Network. Find out more at justenough.trope.com. I'm joined on this episode by Gooey Fame. Gooey is a musician and a podcaster and the host of shows like Existence is Futile, a Star Trek The Next Generation podcast, Pro Wrestling Required Viewing, which looks at wrestling-adjacent pod culture, and Virtual Theater, a podcast about video game movies and the stories that shaped them. Gooey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. Oh, did I cut you off?
Oh, I was just going to say, it's good to be back on the Just Enough Trope Network.
Well, it's good to have you back. Now, you've got something of a network going yourself. You've got a wrestling podcast, a video game podcast, a Star Trek show. 2 out of those 3 genres regularly produce some pretty bad movies, and the third can be a little either or sometimes. Why do you think it's so hard to create a good film about those kinds of genres or media?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, wait. Which do you think is the 2 out of 3?
Star Trek. I think Star Trek is, oh boy. Now there's new ones too.
Okay.
I don't know. I'd say they're probably just over 50, just over 500 on the batting average.
Okay.
To use a sports metaphor for our movie today.
I would back that.
Okay.
Yeah, Star Trek's probably hard just because of the nature of the way the show I think the types of stories they do in that almost work better as like short stories as opposed to films, but or I don't know. It seems like why can't they do it more consistently? And then video game movies. I think the big thing with those is there just hasn't been like enough put behind them yet. Like enough interest behind them by the people making them.
You're envisioning like a Marvel Cinematic Universe where we have investment in them and then we're spending time with it and we've got major talent coming on and it isn't just like a cash grab.
Yeah. So it's not just, I know a lot of people say they say this about a lot of comic book movies too, or they used to, where it's like, oh, these people, they don't even care about comics. I think that's part of it, but it's really also just it's not just the creators, but the producers who are putting this stuff together, it's it's like they just don't have, it's like, whatever, we'll just throw out a whatever script because the people who like it will go see it.
And for that reason, I mean, we're already talking about Avengers Endgame, of course, came out at the time we're recording this last weekend. So we're already talking about Marvel films on this podcast. And to me, it seems like I know the job of the producer in Hollywood is always to make that money, and is to take something that there might be a kernel of interest and turn into something that people would pay tickets for. But I almost think that in addition to the artistry on the directing and the acting and the writing side, there's an art to the producing side of it as well. You get somebody like Kevin Feige who has this great combination of both being a huge fan of these properties, from a young age, but also having the foresight and the talent to put them all together and get them on the screen. I think it's super rare. We need a video game Kevin Feige is what we need.
Yeah. I wonder who that could be.
I have no idea.
I think we're close. I think we're on the cusp of as video games, they're already huge. It's obviously a huge industry, but I think as more and more people are okay, these could be good movies. I'm
just picturing that it's a Cliffy B or something like that.
Oh no,
he's like the Zack Snyder of video game movies.
If it was The Rock, I would be okay with it because Rampage was an okay time for what it is.
Yeah. Okay, I could see that. Yeah, or just somebody who's got who's deep in on acting. And then is, in the producing side, but is also a big gaming fan. Just somebody kind of stepping up and trying to take that. Who's
the Kong Skull Island guy, the director?
Jordan Vogt-Roberts.
I know, he's doing that Metal Gear movie.
Yeah.
And then it was he was I want to do a Metroid movie. And there was something where he's here's what I would do for a Zelda movie. And it's whether or not his opinions were good, is less of a factor in that. It's he's got a bunch of ideas, so
yeah. Don't say anything bad about his movies though, or he'll get real sad on Twitter.
Oh yeah, I know that Kong. Yeah,
Yeah, he didn't like that very much.
Yeah.
Do you think it's the interactivity of games that keeps it out of the movie sphere? Like something that Metal Gear Solid's a great example because it's basically just a movie that you watch and you get to push buttons every once in a while. But do you think it's the fact that like I don't interface with Doom Guy if I'm not the one holding the shotgun?
I think that might be what's holding up a lot of like the creators who are making it, where it's like we talked on Virtual Theater about the Doom movie, and it was like, yeah, of course, like we want it to feel like a first person shooter in this one scene, so they have that like whole sequence from it, you know, where
right,
where it's like they want to replicate certain aspects of the gameplay instead of like how you feel when you're watching it.
Right.
So I think that might be a challenge because I think you could overcome that still.
Yeah, they basically just invented or reinvented like POV shots. Like we know what a POV shot is.
Yeah.
Just like, and if it was Doom 3, you couldn't see anything anyway. So isn't that the one with the flashlight?
Yeah. They were going for that vibe for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, you might be onto something with like, there is like an extra element with the interactivity, but I think the biggest hurdle is just like the lore and the length of a lot of these games is like hard to condense into, under 2 hours.
Right. Yeah. Do you think that there is a video game movie that's really nailed it from your perspective?
That's a good question. I honestly think that Rampage nailed it.
Sure.
Because it's just like the game is a dumb game about giant animals destroying skyscrapers, and that's what the movie is. It's like a big dumb movie. You know, it's got plenty of flaws for sure, but I think it at least nailed the vibe of what they were going for.
Yeah, watchable.
Do you have one?
You're gonna ask that. I got a kind of cheat answer, which I would say, I think like The Matrix, because The Matrix has very video gamey elements, and I mean, of course, in the world of the film, they're like literally inside kind of a game type thing. Tron is reaching way back. I think that Tron also has its problems, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's got that really heavy-handed metaphor. It's so meta because it's like, you're in the computer. It's like, okay, but still there are like light bikes and tanks and things like that are kind of cool. Yeah,
I think there are plenty of good video game movies out there, but it's the adaptation part that's like the hard part.
Yeah, for sure. I also think it's funny that there aren't more, I guess I'm not exactly sure how you do it, but there aren't more like wrestling pictures. Like you've got The Wrestler, and then of course you've got a lot of WWE stars who are actors now through like WWE films and like sponsored productions. But I mean, I don't feel like there's a ton of wrestling pictures when, if you look back at old Hollywood, almost every other picture was like a wrestling picture. Yeah,
there's not many. There's Ready to Rumble, which you could probably do on this show.
Yeah.
There was, we did it on Pro Wrestling Required Viewing way back in the day. It was the Paradise Alley.
I don't know that one.
It's a Stallone movie from the late 70s, I think. And it feels like, I actually don't know, it had to have come out before, but it feels like the prototype for Rocky.
Okay, all right.
And I know he did a lot of the wrestling choreography was done. Who do you work with again? It was Terry Funk, and Terry Funk is in the movie.
Oh,
so,
sure.
It's not good, I don't think, but some of the wrestling scenes in the end like have some cool like shots. But that's maybe the closest to like the wrestler. The wrestler did it, but that's it.
Yeah, right. There was wasn't there a movie called, maybe it was a TV movie called Takedown that was like about college wrestling.
Oh, I've never seen that.
Or no, it was, that's right. It was Lorenzo Lamas, and it was in like the late 70s. I remember seeing it on TV once. It's not a good movie. That's all I could think of.
There was Foxcatcher, if we're talking about.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I thought it was pretty good. But yeah, professional wrestling. That's hard to do, I guess, because it's like it. There was this year or last year they had that movie about Paige fighting with my family. That was like a biopic sort of thing. That was like But I think the thing you struggle with sometimes when making a wrestling movie is like how much is real and how much is fake. You know, how much
the kayfabe aspect.
Yeah, how much kayfabe do you want there to be? Because they kind of blended that. Like they were mostly just like non-kayfabe in that movie, but then there was times where I was like, "Wait, am I supposed to interpret this as a real wrestling match or
Sure.
not?" Yeah.
I think that's what was so interesting about The Wrestler and about like the wrestling world in general. Now that the curtain's been drawn back and everybody's kind of a smark, is like it's like seeing a movie about a movie or a movie about a play, you know, where people are one way on stage and they get off and it's like, that was pretty good. Hey, is there any coffee? You know,
Right.
Sort of letting go of the character. So yeah, I think that they should push that.
Yeah.
Did you see the Fighting with My Family?
Yeah, I saw it in theaters actually.
Okay.
It was okay. It was interesting because The Rock produced it, and Stephen Merchant wrote and directed it, right?
Yeah,
So,
right. Yeah.
but it was kind of okay to mediocre kind of story.
Huh.
They didn't really want to it was like a typical biopic sort of, and then also like they don't really, because like WWE I think also worked with them. It's like they don't really want to get into some of the like real problems.
Yeah. The sort of unauthorized side is what you want to see. I want to see somebody's got to hype up Joaquin Phoenix to do the Terry Funk story.
As Terry Funk?
Oh yeah,
That's excellent casting.
Take it on method. Yeah,
Oh my
grow out
God.
the greasy hair and do the whole thing.
I would like to see though a wrestling movie that I guess like Ready to Rumble was probably, but I'd like to see a kayfabe wrestling movie. I guess there's like Nacho Libre. Is that
Yeah,
one?
right.
But I want to
right,
see
right.
like a semi-serious like movie where like wrestling is just real.
Yeah. I should mention that we're just talking American cinema here. There's a long tradition of like Mexican wrestling flicks.
Oh yeah, all the
with El Santo or whatever. Yeah. Well, this is all on topic, right, for the show?
No.
To bad movies.
It's close.
You're a touring musician as well. I think you told me previously that you've been in a lot of bands as a gun for hire or a bass for hire.
Sure, yeah.
Is it safe to say that your main genre is emo revival?
Yeah, that has been for a while, which is funny because that's not what I listened to like as a teenager. When I was getting into music, I was more into like I'm from a small town and I was into punk rock, and my only access to it was like through the internet. So it was like a trickle of like I just liked kind of the quote unquote classics, the Misfits and
yeah, sure.
and whatever. And then I met some people in a like pop punk / emo band and joined that band, and that was like my gateway like to emo, was like playing it in a way. And then just met more people in that kind of scene, and then now that's like mostly what I play, which is funny.
Sure. That's funny. I think I kind of missed emo the first time around too. How would you characterize emo as a revival in comparison to the late 90s or early 2000s emo?
Oh, I guess it's a little bit more. There's definitely a little bit more of like a quote unquote like pop aspect, or like a pop punk aspect to it, like where it feels a little bit more. It depends on the band, but I guess it feels a little bit less raw, if that makes sense. When I think of like the old emo, I think of like there's like bands like Captain Jazz, or like or even if you go all the way back to like Fugazi or something, where it's like those are a little bit more like harsh and like punk, where now I feel like it's gone to, it's more melodic and upbeat in a way. Still sad, but
the key element to emo, obviously.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of video game enthusiasts are also really into video game music, be it like the sweeping RPG soundtracks or 8-bit chip tunes. Are you an aficionado of video game music?
Yeah, I also do stuff for ZeldaDungeon.net, which is a Zelda fan site, and that's like my favorite game series, and that's kind of known for having some great classic tunes like Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past, having these classic video game soundtracks. So I've always been drawn to, I love like Nintendo games and Nintendo soundtracks. I like some, I also like some like music, like non-video game inspired bands, but I haven't delved too much into it, so.
Sure. That's like a whole genre with subgenres now.
Yeah, you like see people playing with like Game Boys and
right,
stuff.
yeah.
I think it's
contraptions.
it's awesome. Like when I'll like watch a YouTube video of it, and it's like, yeah, that's cool. But
the film we're talking about today is famous in one way for its music and for one song in particular, a song that, considering what we now know about R. Kelly, is something of a literal guilty pleasure, I guess, for me. As a musician, are there films that you hold as guilty pleasures due to their music or their music focus?
That's great. 'Cause I loved when I was like I was like, whatever year it came out, I was like the perfect age, maybe a little bit older, but I loved School of Rock.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
I was in like 8th grade, and it was like these kids playing music, and I was just learning how to play guitar and bass and stuff, and I thought that this is so awesome. I can't think of, I don't know if that's considered bad or not. Because
I don't think that I think the producers considered it bad. I might have my story wrong, but I think that like that was Jack Black he was around, but like not a huge thing. And I think even the producers thought this isn't going to do anything. And then it came out and was like this sleeper hit that kind of reinvigorated his career.
There's a lot of movies though where I can't think of a good example right now that, oh, you know what? I don't know if this is considered bad or not either, but a couple years ago I was very into the pop star Lonely Island movie.
Okay, yeah.
I thought all the songs on that were really funny, and
it's got Seal in it too.
And Seal's in it, and his songs are so funny, and that's actually a thing I'm always drawn to, like more than like regular music, is like comedy music. I like listen to that. I like, or even just like songs that are goofy. Maybe not explicitly meant to be comedy, but I'm always drawn to like stuff like that more, and maybe that's annoying to some people because that's what I'll like play when I'm around, but I'll be like, listen to this Lonely Island song or something.
Sure. Well, Goofy's a good watchword for this show, but it's the wrong cartoon company. But we'll get into it. The name of the show is Craft of Services. On every episode of the podcast, we look at a film that's poorly rated, generally lower than 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, but one that was well remembered by audiences at large. In the case of today's film, the largest part of that audience is comprised of millennials, that magical unicorn generation that's apparently killing everything. They're just killing every industry, I guess. Millennials are generally held to have been born between 1981 and 1996, which would mean that the average millennial viewer was 8 years old in 96, and therefore the perfect audience for a hybrid animated sports feature featuring Air Jordan and Hair Jordan. I'm talking, of course, about the 1996 film Space Jam, starring beloved cartoon character Michael Jordan and six-time NBA champion Bugs Bunny. Blending traditional animation with live-action actors was nothing new. Film and animation pioneer Max Fleischer was combining animated and real-world elements through rotoscoping as well as early as the 1910s. The meaning of cartoon characters and flesh-and-blood actors in 20th century film was mainly relegated to dance and musical numbers, a la Gene Kelly and Jerry the Mouse, or Dick Van Dyke and some Penguins, or Paula Abdul and MC Scat Cat. But the blockbuster release of Who Framed Roger Rabbit in 1988 changed all of that and led to a revival of live-action animation projects and the Looney Tune brand in general. After Nike produced 2 well-received Air Jordan commercials in the early 90s featuring Jordan and Bugs, Warner Brothers realized they had a real jam going down, and they took their chance and did their dance at the Space Jam. Before we get to the main course of what we're discussing today, I need to find out, would you consider yourself a millennial?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I was born in 90, so...
Okay.
Like you were saying, like I was like the perfect age for this movie.
Are you a Looney Tunes fan?
I was as a kid, and I don't know if it's because of this movie or
It might be.
Yeah, because I was 6 when it came out, and I definitely remember like full all in being into it right away. But I also I'm also from Illinois, and the like go to like amusement park is Six Flags Great America. In the Chicagoland area, so and we would go when I was a kid. We would go like once a year, and so like that's kind of, it's got like, the Looney Tunes characters and like suits and stuff. So like I feel like I always just was like Looney Tunes is like cool for some reason.
Yeah. I mean, I know that they're still around, especially like you mentioned in like merchandising and marketing. But I wonder what the exposure even is these days for young kids. Like in the film, we see Jordan's fake kids watching old Looney Tunes cartoons. And I have endless memories of watching Looney Tunes shorts as a kid, mostly because that's all that was on. I mean, I loved them. I loved the Looney Tunes, but there's so many other cartoons out there now. Like Jordan's kids must have been the last children alive to actually watch like a Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote cartoon.
Yeah, I remember too watching those, and I remember them. There must have been some channel that like played the reruns or something, because I definitely have fond memories of like watching them on TV.
Yeah, and of course, like the Animaniacs came out, in like the early '90s or so, and so I guess that was sort of part of it. But yeah, it's just I saw the old jokes, a lot of cross dressing for some reason. Everybody is smoking, a lot of like physical abuse, and it's just like the sort of thing where I guess a kid would probably just watch like a Pokemon or a Dragon Ball or something rather than tune into this old timey cartoon.
It might have been it might have been depending on what channels you could actually get. Because I remember when I was younger, we only had like basic cable or whatever, and then it was like all of a sudden we had like 60 channels, and it was like, oh, I can watch Dragon Ball Z now. Like I'm never going back.
Yeah, screw you, Tweety Bird. Yeah.
I was gonna say another exposure that I had to to Looney Tunes was like, for some reason there was like wrestling crossover merch with Looney Tunes. I remember too.
Really?
Yeah, we talk about it actually on Pro Wrestling Required Viewing. We did an episode about Looney Tunes Back in Action.
Yeah, right.
The follow-up to this, because Goldberg was in it. And
Oh, that's right.
I can't remember. We go into it in the episode, but I feel like some wrestler or some promotion did like crossover merch with like Tweety Bird was a thing. And I don't have the full details on this, but I know there was like an element of that mixed into it. So I was like, all angles was being attacked by Looney Tunes merch.
Tweety Bird is like the perfect crossover thing because he's just blank like a Buddhist monk. You know, he can fit. He's into like Harley Davidson merchandise. You know, and he's like, oh, Mack truck. He's Tweety on your mud flaps or whatever.
Yeah, I don't get why, but okay.
Yeah, I don't. He's just kind of like Zen. You know, you can't put anything on him. Are you a basketball fan?
Not really. No, I don't really like any like real sports. Yeah, you know, I like wrestling. When I was young, like my family is, so like my parents are super into, basketball, baseball, and football, and Chicago is, we're in Illinois,
sure.
So we're not actually near. We didn't grow up near Chicago, but like that's the team. So it was that was also the perfect like crossover, because it was like at that time I was a huge Michael Jordan fan.
Sure.
But then once I got into the age of like being a junior high student and getting into music, I was like, I'm not into sports,
Yeah, right. It doesn't have to be either or, but it often is.
Yeah, it's weird in the emo revival scene. There's like a like joke of like emo sports. Like there's a lot of bands that are named, like there's a band called Free Throw, there's a band called Modern Baseball, so
okay, sure.
So that is an element to it, and a lot of my bandmates are like die hard sports fans, so like there is crossover, but that wasn't me.
It's a different kind of esports.
Oh no.
Anybody who's not old enough, though, has to be made aware how massive basketball was in the 90s, owed in large part to Jordan and stars like him. Basketball is still huge. I mean, like the New York Knicks I think they're actually like the 7th most valuable sports franchise at like $3.6 billion in value. So like they're up there. But in the 90s, basketball was everywhere. And as a white kid in Minnesota with, we just got like our fledgling crappy team, the Timberwolves, I didn't really consider myself like a basketball fan, yet I knew all the players. I watched the finals. I wanted the shoes. Oh, the shoes. Could never afford the shoes. Yeah. And so maybe it's another case of like nothing else is on, but but now there's like, there's Fox Sports started the same year as this film, and you've got MMA and UFC and ESPN, the Ocho now or whatever. Speaking of esports, ESPN airs esports, and you've got video games, and so maybe there's a dilution of the audience. But man, it was really, really big back then.
Yeah, I remember and come to think of it, it's like I could probably name like a lot of the like major players on the Bulls at that time, even still today. And of course there was like, Dennis Rodman and stuff too, who was just like, was like a superstar in his own right too. And also a wrestler, member of the NWO. So
yeah, God. I love that idea of the Looney Tunes crossover merch and Daffy Duck crotch chopping or whatever.
Oh my
things.
Yeah.
Why did you want to talk about Space Jam today?
When you told me about the idea for this, and you mentioned the Mario Brothers movie, it's in the same like genre for me of movies that I probably watched like every other day as a child, like on VHS, just like wore out the tape on and like actually kept watching into my adulthood just because it was like the comfort thing to watch. That and like Ninja Turtles, where it's like they're like movies where like I couldn't even separate like the movie from like my experience watching them as a child.
That's interesting.
So
that's really, that connects, or at least like mirrors my experience with the film, which is that, and I'm not a millennial, by the way, but like my troubled history with this film goes back to the fact that I saw it at a time when, like, it's one of my first real disappointments at the movies. Like when you're a kid, you're happy to be seeing a movie. You don't know if it's good or bad. It's just got characters that you like, and you just go, yeah, I saw that movie. And this is one of the first movies that I sat down and thought, okay, I like Michael Jordan. Okay, I love the Looney Tunes. Let's watch this. And then I walked out like, that was not good. And I just learned that movies can be bad, and now I'm mad.
That was like, at least, that's like a sign of your development, though.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Space Jam. Hopefully we can turn my hate around a little bit. A lot of the Looney Tunes shorts are about fun-loving tunes trying to get the antagonist to get over himself. So maybe we can plug up my shotgun and it'll explode backwards and my face will be all sooty, but I'll learn something.
I love it.
Before we get started, I want to reiterate that we talk a lot about Rotten Tomatoes on this show, but this podcast is not in the pocket of Big Tomato. We don't endorse Rotten Tomatoes. We just use it as a metric in this case on this show. And as a pop culture commentator and a podcaster, what do you think personally about the popularity of aggregate review sites?
I was just talking about this the other night. Like, I actually really enjoy talking about like the tomato meter number.
Yeah.
Almost like, because like I don't enjoy sports, and I feel like talking about that is like the closest I get.
This is your rankings, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
RBIs and yeah.
I mean, you get a little bit of that kind of feeling from like talking about like wrestling and like the meta of that, but I more so get a kick out of like the idea of like what a movie has on the tomato meter, or like I actually don't care as much about like Metacritic and stuff, but yeah, I'll endorse the tomato meter personally.
Okay, all right. That's a first on this show, I think.
Oh, really? Okay.
I love the fact that it's sort of like your sports stats. Even though it's like almost completely imaginary. Like where I grew up, my local wrestling, this takes me way back, but my local wrestling promotion was the AWA, and they used to publish I used to get like the Wrestling Weekly or whatever the magazine was. It was like this crappy newsprint, magazine, and they'd have like the rank, here's the best top 10 wrestlers this week, or who's in line for the belt. Of course, it's all fake, but it's just like, oh, so-and-so's at number 4. I think he's got a real chance this year.
They have tried to bring that back a couple of times, like that concept. Really? Like
in the internet age.
Yeah, in like I think like a year and a half ago, they tried to like reintroduce that to SmackDown, but like no one one was willing to take it seriously. I'm actually like into that, but it's what can you do? Who's
on the disabled list? I guess that's real though.
Yeah, that's too real, maybe, for them. They don't want to acknowledge that.
So you have the real disabled list, and then the shoot or the what's it called? The work disabled list.
Yeah, I will say though, I don't use Rotten Tomatoes as like necessarily like how good, like I don't say like, oh, it's a good movie, it's got an 80, you know. I just find, I'm like, oh, if 80% of the people thought it was like worth seeing, like that's interesting, you know. I just find it interesting whatever the score is, you know.
Yeah, I definitely look at it as like a bird's eye view type situation where you can just see what people in general are thinking, what audiences are thinking, and I definitely don't use it as like an actual hard metric as to like whether a movie is good or not. Case in point, a movie I saw recently called High Life is at an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, and for me, that was not an 82% movie.
Yeah, I saw that recently too, and I don't even know what I would actually. I like tried to do a rating on Letterboxd, but I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know if I can give it a score, you know?
Yeah. I need like hieroglyphics instead of stars or something like that. I'm not sure like where this rating really fits. Yeah, yeah. Well, we're talking about Space Jam, of course, today. It was released first in November 15th of 1996. It's, of course, rated PG. It's the first Looney Tunes feature of any kind to be rated PG. It clocks in at 88 minutes, which is probably the limit of what they could squeeze out of the premise. The film was a runaway success at the box office. It made $230 million on an $80 million budget, and 230 million simoleons is $327 million in 2019 dollars. The film sits at 42% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's at a 59 on Metacritic, and it's at 6.4 on IMDb. That's 6.4 out of 10. It was directed by Joe Pytka, and if you don't know that name, there's no reason that you would. Pytka was a prolific and successful director of commercials and music videos. He's directed videos for Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, Britney Spears, and he directed the video for the 1997 Beatles release Free as a Bird. He also directed the two commercials that served as inspiration for Space Jam, which came out in 92 and 93. And he also holds the record for the most nominations for the Directors Guild of America Award for Outstanding Directing for commercials. He's only directed two features, Space Jam and the 1989 Richard Dreyfuss comedy Let It Ride, which is about gambling, and we're going to talk about gambling later. It was also, this movie was written by the team of Leo Benvenuti and Steve Rednick. They also wrote the Santa Claus series of films. The writing team of Timothy Harris and Herschel Weingrod also contributed to the script. They helped develop 80s comedies like Trading Places and Brewster's Millions. They also wrote for Ivan Reitman, who produced this movie, along with Twins and Kindergarten Cop and, of course, Ghostbusters. If we had to, and we probably should just for the sake of posterity, can you summarize the story of Space Jam briefly?
Okay, so the Looney Tunes are challenged to a basketball game, or they challenge, I should say, invading aliens who want to enslave them for their outer space amusement park, and they enlist the help of Michael Jordan to take on these monsters who have stolen the talent from various NBA players.
Who is a baseball player, by the way. He plays baseball.
Michael Jordan. Yes, this is at that point, that weird point in his career. That baseball thing has nothing to do with the movie.
And as premises go, there's just so much happening at the start of the film. There's a phrase in writing called hat on a hat, which basically means like you don't need to overload something with premises. You know, you establish what's going on, you start dealing with it. And as this opens, we open with kid Michael Jordan, you know, saying he wants to play baseball. Then we cut to real Michael Jordan in a dramatization of the real press conference where he retired for the first time from basketball. Then we cut to space, where a guy and his minions have to save their theme park, so they kidnap the Tunes, and then we get into a basketball game, and then they kidnap Michael Jordan, and he wants just to be a baseball player. It's like this insane stacking of circumstances in the film.
And yet, it's like an hour and a half, or less than that. It's like an hour and 20 minutes long. So
yeah, right. I know. Yeah, and they're all quickly and easily resolved, I guess, and then we just move on. And then an alien spaceship lands on a baseball field, and everybody's totally cool with that.
Oh yeah, I had forgotten that was a thing that happened like this time around, and then like that seemed, out of all the like stupid things that happen, like that seemed like the silliest thing to me.
It's almost like they just couldn't. How do we get him back? I don't know. Spaceship, I guess.
Yep.
That kind of pageantry or spectacle wouldn't be out of place in the small league ballpark that Jordan was playing in at the time. This film actually has at least a shred of basis in reality. Jordan, of course, did retire from basketball in '93, and the circumstances around that are tangled themselves. I should say, first of all, if you're interested in this real-world story, you should check out the 30 for 30 documentary, Jordan Rides the Bus, which details his short career as a minor league baseball player. Have you seen the movie Jordan Rides the Bus?
I haven't seen that. No, that sounds cool, though.
It's not like, I was going to say it's not great, but it's an okay documentary. It just doesn't have any great insights into the events. And it's overly reverential towards Jordan. Not as much as Space Jam is, but if you or the viewers are unfamiliar with the story, the real world story, it's pretty informative. And as somebody who lived through that time, I can say, it's pretty reflective of like the whole situation. Like at the time, we were all asking ourselves, what is going on? Why would the world's greatest basketball player, who's in the exact middle of his prime, and he just won 3 championships back to back, why would he just walk away? And it's a really complicated story.
I actually know like nothing about it. I just remember, being like, I was like 6 or whatever, and it was, and I do remember like the like thing that at least my child brain was able to grasp was that it's like, let's all like dunk on Jordan for, being a bad baseball player, but like
it was totally that, yeah.
But like I didn't ever know anything more to it, and then as I've gotten older, I've just never thought about it. So
everybody kind of forgot about it, and it's funny because you mentioned people dunked on him. That like totally happened, and of course in the movie, and I'm sure this happened, like in his circle, but everybody is so sycophantic about it. It's like great strikeout, looks great job, look. Yeah, can't teach that.
That was that was really good, actually. Like that was like one of the best moments of the movie.
Bits of satire, yeah. Well, the Bulls won their 3rd consecutive NBA championship in June of '93, and just a month later, this is the sad part of the story. James Jordan Sr., Michael's father, was killed at the age of 57 in like mysterious circumstances near his home in North Carolina. He appeared to be the victim of a highway carjacking, and it was a brutal and horrific crime. And 2 men were convicted and sent to jail for life for the slaying. But now in the intervening years, these things have come out. Like one of the men has claimed that he had only helped dispose of the body, like he wasn't involved in the murder.
Wow.
Evidence may have been mishandled in the trial, and the whole thing is a mess. Anyway, as you can expect, this gravely affected Jordan, and his father, as we see depicted by an actor in the film, was a great inspiration to him, and in his career, first at the University of North Carolina and then later in the NBA. And he had been a semi-professional baseball player himself, and he taught Michael the game when he was growing up. So Jordan announced his retirement in October of '93, stating that he wanted to become a Major League Baseball player. And Jordan had played ball in high school when he was a pitcher. And he got a minor league contract right away with the Chicago White Sox, which is the team that he had hoped to play for in the MLB. Just a note, the Sox were owned by Bulls owner Jerry Reinsdorf, so you can draw what conclusions from that you will. And he started playing in the minor league for the Birmingham Barons in '94, and he wasn't great. And major sports outlets like ESPN really had a field day with it. Like, what is this guy doing? But it really didn't matter to the fans. As I'm sure you can imagine, the Barons Stadium was packed for home games, and they set all kinds of attendance records that season. And there was like a ton of press. There's a scene in the Jordan Rides the Bus documentary where Jordan is just at spring training in Florida, and there's 1 million photographers lined up watching him, like taking every cut like he's Derek Jeter or something like that.
Wow. So I feel like even though it like he probably got that position like undeservedly, like the fact that he actually did it like just on principle, I'm like, yeah, like whatever, go do whatever you want. Like why not? That sounds cool.
And a lot of this movie, and we'll talk about like the motivations behind making this movie in a second, but to me a lot of the movie feels like a papering over of like this time. Like I don't know how you'd fit the tunes into this, but I almost wish that it had been kind of more about like his well-meaning, well-intentioned failures, like in minor league ball.
I actually thought that too this time around. I was like, there's actually something interesting there.
That's the interesting story. Yeah, right.
It's not at all present in the movie.
you're just going to set up like outer space theme park. That's kind of cool too, but we're not going to go back there. And then we just leave the whole baseball thing hanging. But
what it ends up being is just about, it's like almost a commercial for his return to basketball.
Right. Yeah.
Which is, I guess they got a director who directs commercials. So sure.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. A lot of people were really realistic about his chances at the time, contrary to the fawning treatment that you see him get in the film. And the funny thing is, like, he was in prime shape still then, but watching, if you watch this documentary, you hear a lot of people say that it just takes time in the box to just know the game. It's like that Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours thing. We had other multi-sport stars like Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson who both played football and baseball, but they had played college ball too, and they were both drafted into the league out of college. But ultimately, Jordan's coaches and his fellow players, they all said that they thought that he had definitely had a shot if he had just stuck with it and just been in it for a while. And to be fair, his record did get steadily better. He began playing for a different team, the Scottsdale Scorpions, later on. So at this point, I should ask, do you know the conspiracy theories about why all of this happened in the first place?
No, what? There's conspiracy theories?
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
It's also refreshing to know that somebody could live in the Chicagoland or the Illinois area and not be a major Bulls fan and know everything about it.
I totally wasn't.
I look forward to schooling you.
Yeah, no, I'm excited now. But
Jordan, as it's pretty widely known, has a bit of a gambling problem, and I don't mean like betting his freedom on a basketball game against the Monstars. Sports Illustrated had run an article in '92 about his alleged problems with gambling. And there was a book as well by Richard, some guy named Richard Aquinas, called Michael and Me, Our Gambling Addiction. And the article and the book said things like he had gone to Atlantic City like during the 92 NBA Finals. And I don't mean like around the time, like in between games, he had gone down to like Atlantic City to gamble. And in the book, like this Aquinas guy says that Jordan owed him like over $900,000 just from golf betting.
Wow.
So at this point, like this became all the questions that he was asked were about this. It wasn't about like the shoes or Spike Lee or anything like that anymore. It's like, what do you think about this? So the NBA had to open an investigation to see if he had been betting on sports games like basketball games, because that would be a problem.
Yeah.
Like a Pete Rose situation.
Right.
And the rumor had started that NBA Commissioner David Stern had at the time told Jordan to just leave the league for a while until things blew over. I should say there's never been anything to support this. Although it's interesting to note that the investigation into Jordan ended like the day he left the league. They just canceled the investigation. And then, of course, he returned in the middle of the 95 season to a huge fanfare.
That's wild. Yeah. In my defense, it was like big Bulls fan as a kid. And then as soon as I became of the age of like disinterest in sports, it's like I could have cared less about anything. And that's like the age I would like have like investigated into like deeper things about it other than like cool dunks,
Yeah, yeah. And as far as like the papering over goes, like this is like 94, 95, so there's no real, internet news at this time.
Right.
Not really even like the 24-hour news thing hasn't even ramped up. So I could see him dropping out, people being like, that's weird. And then if you don't follow the story, it's like, oh, he's back. Okay. And we just go about our lives. But if this had happened now, like if LeBron just quit to, I don't know, do synchronized swimming or something like that, and then came back in 18 months, I feel like there'd just be endless think pieces about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you wouldn't even be able to like go online without seeing it.
Yeah. Some people, this is really sinister, but some people also think that Jordan's father might have been killed over his gambling debts.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
Which nobody's ever made a connection
Right.
to. And yeah, but it's just like, it's weird. It's just weird sort of synchronicity with everything that's going on.
Yeah. It's just like, yeah, it's weird. Wow. Well, that's all some crazy theories, at least. So.
Well, now a fun cartoon movie.
Yeah.
I think we established before that Looney Tunes characters seem to go with a lot of things, but combining them with basketball might seem like a strange combination. But you have to remember that Michael Jordan was not only the most successful basketball player at the time, but also the most successful brand pitchman like of all time. Like screw Haynes, he was selling everything. And they comment on that a little bit in the film, with like McDonald's and Gatorade and Coke. And a lot of that is down to his superstar agent, David Falk, who was so powerful at the time, and still, that he was listed among the 100 most powerful people in sports for 12 straight years from 1990 to 2001 by the Sporting News. He's actually in the film. He's the guy that says, there's the sequence where we're going around and all the players are scared. They're wearing gas masks. And then the guy comes out and says, the players are, they're going on strike until they can determine that the arenas are safe. That's David Falk in the film.
Okay.
And he had originally made the Nike Air Jordan deal for Jordan, which was, of course, huge. It's still going today. And apparently he's the one that pitched the idea of Space Jam to Warner Brothers. These commercials had come out, and they were originally developed by a different person, by a guy named Jim Riswold. But Falk took the idea and the positive response of the ads and went to Warner Brothers and sold them on the film. And he serves as an executive producer on the film.
Wow. Okay. This guy is a genius, is what you're saying. Yeah.
He's really good at doing this. He's really good at selling Coke and other things. He's good at selling people too, not in a slavery way, because it's interesting to note that the other players that are in the film, the guys who lose their powers as well, are all represented by him. Charles Barkley, Sean Bradley, Patrick Ewing, Larry Johnson, and Muggsy Bogues, all managed by Falk. And if you know anything about 90s basketball, there were a lot of other players at the time who were way better than some of these guys. Like Patrick Ewing's pretty good, but Karl Malone, Hakeem Olajuwon, John Stockton, David Robinson, they could have all been in the film as the all-stars of the NBA, but they weren't represented by this guy.
And there's some of them included where it's they're just more iconic or stars,
Yeah.
Where is Shaq? Why is Shaq not in this? And Shaq is an actor,
Right, yeah. Yeah, Shazam is another film you'll see someday on this podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah.
The thing is, somebody has to like the film first, though.
Yeah, I guess.
Does anybody like Shazam? Or not Shazam.
Oh,
Kazaam.
You're talking about
the thing that everybody does.
Sinbad, fake Sinbad. Yeah.
The fake Sinbad movie, yeah, which is now a real movie.
I'd come back for Kazaam one day.
Okay. All right. We'll pencil you in for that. There's actually a really funny video on YouTube by SB Nation that's done in this documentary style. I'll link it in the show notes.
Oh,
and the host in it,
I saw that, I think.
Did you? Yeah. The host theorizes that the Nerdlucks made a mistake choosing those players. They should have stole the talent of these other players who were better. They could have won the game.
Yeah. Well, I think the movie does a good job laying out why they picked who they did, or at least the first one, because they're a killer. Where
he's a killer.
So if you're an alien coming to Earth looking to steal some talent, that's your first go-to.
Yeah, right. Yeah, get Sean Bradley. Get the tallest guy we can find. Yeah, right. That's funny. Let's talk about who else is in the movie. Of course, there's Michael Jordan playing a fictional version of himself, although not really. Maybe just playing himself from all the commercials. Actress Teresa Randall plays his then-wife, Juanita Jordan. His kids are played by Manor Washington, Eric Gordon, and Penny Bay Bridges, who, as far as I could tell, never really did anything after this. Wayne Knight appears as Stan Podolak, Michael's assistant. And reportedly, the director had wanted an established comic star as the second hand of this film. And he had approached Chevy Chase, he'd approached Michael J. Fox and Jason Alexander, and none of them wanted to be in the movie because they didn't want to act against Michael Jordan or with cartoons.
That's understandable, I guess, when you see how it ended up working out, but...
Yeah, and live action and animation combinations were getting more popular, but the process of making Roger Rabbit was reportedly so difficult that a lot of these veteran actors were we don't want to do that.
You made me think earlier when you mentioned Roger Rabbit, and now also when you're mentioning Wayne Knight. For me, this movie was the touchstone for those things.
Touchstone,
Wayne Knight, when I think of him, I think of this and not Jurassic Park. And
okay, sure.
When I think of, you mentioned the idea of people acting in a computer animated movie like Roger Rabbit, to me, Space Jam was the bar that was set when I was a kid.
Sure.
So that, yeah, it's kind of funny to think about that.
You mentioned the computer graphics. As far as I know, Roger Rabbit was all, or at least mostly, traditional. But this is one of the first its claim to fame is it's one of the first films that combines 3D elements.
Oh, sure, yeah.
With the traditional animation, yeah. Speaking of Roger Rabbit, Bill Murray's in this film, of course, as himself, partly because, as it's stated in the film, he's a friend of Ivan Reitman, and of course he appeared in Ghostbusters. But also, fun fact, he was Robert Zemeckis' original choice for Eddie Valiant in Roger Rabbit. But reportedly, the producers couldn't get a hold of him in time to cast him, which, if you know anything about how he chooses projects, it's not surprising.
Oh,
he has a 1-800 or like a 1-900 line that you call. So like he doesn't have an agent, or at least not a public one, and no representation. And he just has this number that if you are in the know, you know it, and you call it and leave a message basically. And if he ever checks it or like feels like doing something, he'll get back to you.
Weird.
So this is how we got him being in Garfield, because
oh my goodness, okay,
the guy that directed Garfield was named Ethan Cohen. It's spelled different. It's not what you think.
Oh, okay.
But apparently he heard this and thought, yeah, sure, I'll do an Ethan Cohen movie. And so he ends up on Garfield. He's like, where are the Coen brothers? Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's mind-blowing.
And it's also how, like, you'll see him sometimes in, like, indie band videos and things like that. And it's just, I guess if you call him and you just have a good pitch or whatever it is that he looks for, he'll show up. So if you're ever doing, like, a video for a band, you should give him a call. You never know.
Call Bill Murray. That's wild.
Yeah, it couldn't hurt.
It did feel like they, like, wanted him to be in the movie more, because he shows up and he like makes a joke about how he knows, you know, the producer or whatever. And then like before they like, you know, like are like a good game, he's like, anyway, I gotta go.
Yeah, apparently he was only slated to be in the golf stuff.
Okay.
I mean, he's pretty casual. Maybe he was actually just there that day or something, but he started talking around. Pitka did an interview with the Chicago Tribune in like 2009 where he talks about the movie a lot. And he said that once he was on set and he was like talking with some of the actors and the director and finding out how they were actually doing the animated stuff, it sounded like easy. It sounded like, oh, I could do that. And so he started like pitching them like extra scenes. And that's how he ended up in like the final scene, the final half of the game.
He's just got like an interesting like career of like just showing up in movies as himself too. Like, yeah.
This is post Ghostbusters, like 80s Bill Murray, pre Wes Anderson Murray. So this is kind of like a sort of a lacuna in his career. Like what's he up to?
Right. Just hanging out on set.
He hasn't started showing up at college parties yet. You know how it works.
Right.
Various sports personalities appear in the film, like Larry Bird, Coach Del Harris, commentators Jim Rome and Ahmad Rashad are also in it, and many basketball players are in cameos. Interestingly, Dan Castellaneta, the voice of Homer, and Patricia Heaton of Everybody Loves Raymond appear, not as themselves, but just as a crabby couple with courtside seats.
Yeah, I was like, when I saw that scene, I was like, I know who that is, but I couldn't connect the dots. And it's I guess because I don't think about who plays Homer, like what he looks like, you know?
yeah, right. That for me, those are like the weirdest cameos in my mind. Like it just seems when they do this, and we'll at the end of the show we'll talk about Space Jam 2. When they do Space Jam 2, I have to imagine that plenty of celebrities are going to come out of the woodwork to want to be in that thing, right?
I think it'll be now just because it's like, I mean, it's going to have another big basketball star in it, but it's also like now nostalgic for a lot of people. And
yeah, right.
I know I saw that video of like they did like a live reading of it at some place like UCB or something.
Yeah.
And they had like, you know, like Seth Green and
which is weird because there's not like a lot to read. It's not like it's not like the room where there's like a lot of dialogue.
Yeah, true. It's like just like a lot of like Looney Tunes jokes happening, slapstick.
Yeah, did they like audio describe the jokes? Now the bunny kisses Michael Jordan. His lips stretch out to a foot beyond his body.
I would listen to that though.
I know that they made a commercial in 2016 was Space Jam themed, kind of like the old 90s Jordan ads with Blake Griffin and Jimmy Butler.
Oh wow! Okay, that's neat.
And I don't know if that was just them sort of poking the nostalgia, or if that was like those guys' pitch to be in the film, the new film. But
I'm sure like those guys have to like be a fan of it, I'm sure, to some extent.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of millennials in the league.
You mentioned Larry Bird.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this, but I had a NES game that was Jordan versus Bird 1-on-1.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That was like also one of my first big like touchstones to like basketball as a kid, was playing this game.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, I guess like they play 1-on-1 sometimes in the NBA. I don't know.
That my knowledge is lacking there on the video game side. Like there had to be like a Looney Tunes basketball game off of this.
There was. I don't remember if I had that or if a friend did, but I think it was on like PlayStation 1 and like PC. And yeah, it looked, if you looked at it, it looked like your typical, like you're looking at the game from the side type basketball game.
Yeah, right.
But
right.
like, yeah, there's like the Looney Tunes in there, and it's goofy. It probably wasn't good.
Mixing Midway must have had a different sort of setup, because mixing this up with NBA Jam, which just seems like a no-brainer.
Oh yeah, that would have been the obvious good route.
He's literally on fire. Yeah. Well, let's talk about the voice actors in the film. Danny DeVito, of course, is the voice of Mr. Swackhammer, the owner of Moron Mountain theme park. And there's no story there as far as I know. He's just got a distinctive voice and is kind of a character, so I think he's a good fit for Swackhammer. Billy Voice is the voice of Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd. This was actually West's first film voice role. He's, of course, one of the game's most prolific voice actors, voicing Ren and Stimpy, Fry, Bender, Professor, Zap Brannigan, all in Futurama. Doug Funny from Doug, which I guess I didn't know, but yeah, it makes sense.
No, I didn't know that one.
And he's also the voices of, or has been the voices of Shaggy, Popeye, and Woody Woodpecker in various projects. D. Bradley Baker is the voice of Daffy Duck, Taz, Roadrunner, and Toro. Baker would go on to voice Daffy Duck in many other Looney Tunes projects. Bob Bergen plays Marvin the Martian, Porky Pig, Tweety Bird, and Hubie and Bertie. Bergen is the current official voice of Porky the Pig and Tweety, and has voiced many English dubs of Japanese anime shows. Bill Farmer plays Foghorn Leghorn, Yosemite Sam, and Sylvester. He's a veteran voice actor, and he was the voice of Goofy in a Goofy movie, and is the current voice of Pluto. And Maurice LaMarche plays Pepe Le Pew. LaMarche is a voice actor and former stand-up who voiced Egon in The Real Ghostbusters. He's also the voice of the Brain in Pinky and the Brain. And, of course, going off of that, he's known for his Orson Welles impression, which can be heard in episodes of The Critic. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got a...
I remember that iconic kind of sound to him.
Yeah. He's got a couple like YouTube videos about talking about peas. These peas are delicious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Veteran voice actor Frank Welker, who's the voice of Megatron on Transformers, voices Charles, the Jordan family bulldog.
Okay.
If that seems strange, this isn't Welker's first nonverbal voice role. He also provided voices for Santa's Little Helper and Snowball 2 on The Simpsons. He was Nibbler on Futurama, Abu the Monkey in Aladdin, and he was the Martians in Mars Attacks, and many other non-speaking sound roles. Yeah. And last, and maybe she should be first on this list, is June Foray as Granny. June Foray is a storied voice actor who got her start on radio in the 30s. She worked in Warner Cartoons since the 1950s, providing the voice of Granny and Witch Hazel and more. She was also the voice of Rocky the Flying Squirrel and Natasha, as well as Cindy Lou Who, Jokey Smurf, Magica Dispel on DuckTales, and she won a Daytime Emmy in 2012 for her work on The Garfield Show. She actually passed away in 2017, and animation god Chuck Jones, who was not a fan of this movie, by the way, he said of her, June Foray is not the female Mel Blanc. Mel Blanc was the male June Foray.
Wow. She's iconic, and it's funny because I think she just says, like, I'm a cheerleader in this movie.
Yeah, I'm a cheerleader. Yeah, that's it. But they got her in there. So there's a lot of voice talent in the movie. And the funny thing is, Mel Blanc, who died in 1989, could have done this entire movie himself. He was basically all of those voices before he passed away.
Yeah. I do think it's fun to think about how some of these people, it's like you get to do that role, and then it's like you're the go-to guy. Like once they've replaced Mel Blanc or whatever, and then it's like there's almost like a little bit of job security there too.
There is some, yeah, but I was looking at the cast list, which isn't firm, of course, for Space Jam 2, and I don't see Billy West on there. So it's like,
bummer. Okay.
yeah, they're already kind of moving things around. And to be fair to West, I mean, he does a good job. I've heard people say, that doesn't sound like Mel Blanc. And I know I felt that way when I saw the movie, but it's a thankless job. I mean, how do you replace Mel Blanc?
Yeah. I guess maybe because I was like too young, I just never even thought about it. And so now it just seems like, yeah, I'm sure if you played it back to back, I would notice, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, this movie, more than anything else, leaves me with a mountain of unanswered questions.
Yeah.
And not just like, why did they make the movie? I think it's clear why they made the movie. Joe Pitka, in that interview that I mentioned, speculated that over the years, just in licensing alone, Space Jam, birthday candles, shower curtains, and so on and so forth, the movie's made over the $6 billion in merchandising.
The jerseys, the basketball jerseys, those were so cool as a kid.
Yeah. So that's why they made it. I get that. But like, as far as what's going on, even in the world of the film, I'm not sure. So I was hoping that we could like figure out the mysteries of some of these oddities. Like, first of all, Warner Brothers world, like, I guess it's not Toontown. That's a different movie, but their world is within the center of the earth.
Yeah, that didn't, I mean, I always just remember the scene of it crashing into the Piggly Wiggly parking lot and going down and like also the golf stuff. But I was watching it and my partner Kayla was in the room and was like, wait, what is happening? And I was like, I like didn't really consider how weird it is that the Looney Tunes.
It's not what it looks like.
They live in the center of the earth. Okay.
So with a non-critical eye, I was watching it the first time I watched it, and God damn you made me watch this twice. And I thought, like, okay, so maybe it's some kind of like mirror universe situation. Like at the very center of our human reality is the core of the earth, and so you go through that, and you're on the other side, and everything on that side is like mirrored. It's like a cartoon version of everything. But no,
like
the
us?
Cartoon aliens come from space, from like real space.
Oh, okay,
like,
yeah.
We pan up out of the news conference and then out to Moron Mountain. So like there are real cartoon characters in space, but for some reason our Looney Tune characters live inside the earth.
No, I think it's literal. I think they just literally live in the earth.
In a hollow earth.
Yeah, talk about conspiracy theories.
Yeah, right.
And there's like that Warner Brothers like barrier.
Right, which is weird. That's another question that I have. There's a lot of like aggressive, like self-identifying Warner Brothers branding in this film, and they've never been shy about their branding. You know, Porky Pig pops out of the thing every time to say, you know, that's all, folks. But
right.
There are a lot of like, there's jokes at Disney's expense, and there's jokes about the characters, you know, and their relationship to their employers, like Warner Brothers.
Yeah, that gets a lot more. It gets a little more cynical in back in action. The follow up.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen it. Yeah.
So actually,
this is the Brendan Fraser movie.
Yeah, maybe there if it is a sequel, because they act like it is, not really, but they like reference it. Maybe because in that movie they live in L.A. or in Hollywood.
Okay.
And they're like on the Warner Brothers set, and it's like of that era. I think I mentioned like that time period, movies had to get like meta a little bit. Like there's like Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back where they go so it's like that kind of movie almost, and they get way more like, we're gonna do way more jokes about Warner Brothers and like the film business, and it just doesn't feel right. But yeah, they live there, and I'm thinking maybe in this movie, after Wayne Knight and Bill Murray have figured out how to just go down there, they must think like, hey, there's no more reason to live down in the center of the earth. We can come out and share the planet with our fellow sentient beings or something.
That's troubling. Its implications.
This is a real it like, I think that's what inspired the movie Us.
Yeah. Now I'm trying to think of like, do we have cartoon doubles or tethers down there that are like, they act loony?
They look like the Looney Tune style of us. Oh,
They've got like giant hammers instead of scissors. Yeah. There's also like a wrestling connection here in that the way that they're kind of breaking kayfabe. Do you know what I mean? Like Buzz has always like talked to the camera, but like they have a job ostensibly like, Elmer Fudd's going to hunt because it's rabbit season, but instead he's like, well, look at my contract. Like they're kind of breaking out of the showbiz side of it. And they're being like, this sucks. Like, we got to get better agents.
yeah.
You're seeing behind the curtain.
They really, like I said, they really were like, those jokes were funny. Like that's like our brand now.
But I think about it, it's always kind of been their brand because it all stems from like the sort of take my wife please kind of vaudevillian Borscht Belt comedian type thing that like, Buzz is kind of a Henny Youngman or like a Groucho Marx kind of thing. And so they're all doing like these variety show things and then, I guess we're seeing backstage in this case.
I think, Groucho, that's a good comparison to Groucho. I think you're going to hate this, but in our Back in Action episode, I think I said Bugs Bunny is basically Deadpool.
God.
It really sucks to think about, or maybe Deadpool is just Bugs Bunny, but I think
I like that one a little better.
I think it's true, and I think it's terrible.
I got to tell you, I hate being a millennial, but I am still a millennial is what you're saying to me.
Yeah.
So that's all horrifying. What is also horrifying is the cartoon physics and their application in this world.
Yeah.
Like, I just have to say, like, I'm cool with once the humans, we get this in like Roger Rabbit too, like once the humans are in the realm of the Toons, they're sort of subject to the Toons physics. But the Michael ball, the Monstars, they ball Michael Jordan up into like a basketball. That's existentially horrifying.
That I think supports the theory maybe of an alternate dimension because they do say like, hey, this is Looney Tune land.
Right.
But like, I think like there's still like Looney Tune physics when they go to Michael's house in the movie.
Right.
I don't know.
Which is such a weird interlude. Like it's almost, it's clearly this just has to be longer, this film, but like he's got to get his shorts. And so our two ostensible stars, from the cartoon side, Daffy and Bugs, go just look around his house for a while and then run into his kids. And his kids are not horrified. They're like, oh, yeah, of course, it's cartoon characters. Why not?
Yeah, the best I could come up with, other than it needed to be longer, was like they wanted to have kids in the movie or something. I don't know.
In between all this like Hollywood showbiz jokes and like contract law, we had to like remind people it's for the kids.
What's more like horrifying, I think. Well, no, it's on the same par as the Jordan ball is when they blow up Wayne Knight.
Oh God,
that joke is also just horrible, but it's but also like the 3D version of blown up him is so weird and upsetting.
I know, it's terrifying. What I want to know is, are the Toons themselves, are they 2D and the humans are 3D? Do you know what I mean? Like they're rendered in an animation style that has extra shading than the old Looney Tunes. So they do have an illusion of depth, but in their world, are they actually like kind of 2D, not like, well, maybe like sprites, like in a video game? Because when he blows up, they could have just drawn him, just like shown that he was like, oh, he looks like a cartoon. But no, he's like, they want to make sure that this thing has a physical reality in this space, like nothing else on the screen does. And yeah, it's just, I don't even know what it's like. Yeah, it's horrifying.
I think if they had thought that much ahead, they would have.
Okay, they didn't think about it. Okay,
they would have made a joke about how they're 2D or something,
Yeah, something else that is bigger than it should be, or smaller, I guess, than it should be in this movie is like Michael Jordan's house. Like, I don't know why they're trying to pawn us off on like the idea that he just lives in this like, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, nice house in the suburbs.
Yeah.
He's Michael Jordan.
Yeah, it really felt like that stuff with his family. It felt like that just had to be there because it was like it's a commercial for Michael Jordan in a way. So
sure,
you have to see his nice family he has.
Yeah, it's like, Stan, take me to the casino, to Trump Casino.
Yeah, that
couldn't have that scene.
That would have been an interesting take for sure.
He's got a dog named Charles Barkley, I'm assuming.
Oh no. Oh
Isn't
no.
Isn't that the unspoken joke?
I didn't.
Like this...
No, it's not. I didn't even think of that.
Like this joke ever left a joke unsaid, or this movie ever left a joke unsaid?
Oh, it's very subtle, yeah.
Yeah, that's about as subtle as it gets. Something else that confuses me about this film is like they are all real, the Tunes. They have a reality that people either don't know about but are cool with once they find out, or I guess just assume. But we also see them on TV. So they are TV stars who have to act out these cartoons, or those are pre-taped, like they're just like they're movie stars, but they have lives. Like, what is the movie suggesting?
Well, yeah, because they left during that one.
Yeah, they walk out of one of their cartoons. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's almost like they live. This is similar to us, I think. They live underground, and they like. Well, I guess they don't like us. They don't like. They're not like servants to the people above. But it's like they're kind of oppressed. Like they live underground and they have to like keep acting out. What I assume are the same bits over and over. That's a horrifying thing to consider as well. And it's very vaudevillian that they have to do all these shows. There's another video on YouTube that Rachel Bloom is on, the actress from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and she posits like the fact that they're not winning anything in this. Like they're worried that Swackhammer wants to take them away and own them and make them be slaves, but they already apparently exist in a universe where 6 times a day they have to Cartoon Network requires them to go out and get smashed with hammers and like act through their things. So what would be the difference? But you know what? As we see them when they're not on the screen, and they still have like the same motivations. Like right. Sylvester still wants to get Tweety Bird. So maybe they're just like they just happen to be doing it for their own enjoyment. I don't know. Or maybe they've been conned into it's like a the picket painting the fence thing, like from Tom Sawyer.
Okay.
Where it's like, yeah, you guys like doing this, but what if you let us film you?
Sure. Right. Sure. And also we'll stitch a Warner Brothers shield to your ass.
Oh yeah. They definitely don't like it, huh? So
that was very upsetting.
That blows up my theory.
Yeah, they need an agent character. Now, would the agent character be a human or a tune?
The agent character? Wait, who's the agent character?
I'm saying they should introduce an agent character to renegotiate their contracts if we're going to sort of rewrite this.
Oh, it's got to be a human, and it's got to be like a quirky cameo again.
Yeah, right. This would be the Brendan Fraser. I mean, if he wasn't, in later 2003's Back in Action.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Back in Action was cameo ridden, too. So, like, they knew that was an element that they had to have.
One thing I like about this film is that they do, it's not exactly like Roger Rabbit level or Avengers level, but they do try to bring some of the old characters back. Like if you look in the crowd, you'll see a lot of kind of lesser known Looney Tunes characters from over the years. And they have Sniffles the Mouse, who was never like a really popular character, but like they have Sniffles the Mouse in it. And then of course he's cruelly crushed by one of the Mean Team players.
Yeah, I thought it was weird that they like gave him a line, I guess.
Yeah.
I get that feeling sometimes with when you're watching Endgame in a way, no spoilers, but where it's like how'd they decide who gets to speak a line and who doesn't?
But it's all contract stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like it's when you sign up to just the tiny little parts for people who are definitely going to be in other movies. Like when you sign up for your 3-picture deal, there's a small print thing that says, oh yeah, you have to just come in for a day and wear this costume and you'll be in one scene in Endgame or whatever.
Oh, and if I am, like, you have to put my picture up on the screen in the credits and act like it was a big deal.
Like it was a big deal that you were in it. Yeah. 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 That's all down to agents.
Yeah.
Speaking of people having a foot on either side of the divide, Marvin the Martian is the ref in this. And I've always heard the logic that he's the perfect ref because he is part alien, like the Monstars are, and he's part Toon as well.
Ooh.
But as far as that goes, he is a pretty shitty ref. He doesn't call anything.
Yeah, they talked about that in that sports whatever video, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
And like how the score seemed, the continuity with the score is weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, that to me, that actually tied back into like the wrestling of it all, where it's like you watch wrestling and you're like, there are really no rules happening, even when they say there are, you know.
Right.
That's the vibe I got from this.
And a lot of the refs are former performers and wrestlers themselves.
Yeah, so Marvin is like the
okay.
Yeah, I thought for sure, like, you know, because I remembered in the end they go, "Hey, Michael, it's Looney Tune land, like, you know, use that." Or I thought that's a thing, but I thought like maybe you could have done more with that, you know, like instead of like, oh, they thought they were good for 5 minutes because they drank Michael Jordan's.
God, we got to talk about that.
The secret stuff, yeah.
I remember being very upset by that. I know, like, it's a joke, and I suppose it's a joke that's sort of in the vein of something you'd see in, like, an old-time Looney Tunes cartoon. Like, it was in you the whole time, but the 90s sports world had a real problem with substance abuse, and so even to, like, joke about that seems like the wrong place to take something.
Yeah, I was like, it was so weird to watch it this time and, like, think about that.
And to have them, some of them are like, oh, give me that good stuff, but then, you know, Daffy or whatever's like, I don't know. Michael's like, just do it. You want to win, don't you? It's like, yeah, put that on a shirt.
Yeah.
Let's get that on a shirt.
I don't know if this actually existed, like if this is an actual memory I have, or if like it's some crazy memory that, you know, you like implant memories. But like, I think they had like a piece of merchandise that was the Michael Jordan secret stuff.
The bottle?
It was the bottle with like, and it looked like it had the note on it. I feel like my cousin had this, and it like had some weird like flavor powder you could mix into it. I feel
eBay, here I come.
Yeah, I'm like gonna look that up because like I remember that existing. Okay, yeah, Amazon.com, Michael Jordan's secret stuff water bottle. Amazon Choice. Oh, is this the thing they just sell now?
$6 billion.
There you go. Okay, well it just exists now. Walmart.com has it. Okay, so yeah,
All
it
right,
just still.
I gotta get this thing.
Yeah,
I've never seen that.
No, okay, so it is just real. I don't know what the powder was. If that.
Yeah. They're still.
I don't know what I was doing. Yeah.
Waiting for the P test to come back. Oh, that's crazy. I got to get one of those. Yeah, so that's troubling. Something else that's troubling in the film is just the existence of Lola Bunny.
I knew that's what was coming next.
We had to get there eventually.
Yeah, whoa, when Lola Bunny comes in, it's like, oh, she's so hot. It's just like...
I guess I'm just like, and I don't know, maybe you can speak for another generation, but I just feel like I was outside of the age to be somebody who's like jerking it to Lola Bunny.
I don't think it's a thing.
I mean, she was clearly like developed to be in the vein of a Jessica Rabbit or whatever, to be sort of vampy, but yeah.
But she's a bunny.
Yeah, she's a bunny. Exactly.
I don't like I had a lot of like movie crushes as a child, and that's not like one I remember. So
okay, sure.
I don't know. I can't even speak if like that was an effective thing at the time, and it was just weird now.
Yeah, she does look like the chick from Game of Thrones, though, a little bit.
Okay, I guess.
Have you seen that meme, the Natalie Dormer or whatever,
no.
The smirking horror of Highgarden?
No, that's a like that she looks like her.
They have a similar sort of facial expression, this kind of like kind of vampy kind of look to them.
Okay, I'll look that up.
So she was introduced. I have not seen Back in Action. Does she appear in Back in Action?
I don't think so. I don't remember her. That one was like specifically, it was Bugs and Daffy, and like maybe Lola was there. Yeah, that was weird because I remember like. I watched Looney Tunes as a kid, but like I can't think of anything with Lola like after this. So I don't know.
It's weird because I mean, clearly she resonated with some viewers, so like why not bring her back? I always think of the Muppets where you think of the Muppets that have been around for like 50 years since that guy that created him, Jim Henson. I don't know why I blanked on Jim Henson for a
guy.
second, but it's been a while, man. He hasn't been around for a while.
Right.
But they're always like coming up with new Muppets, and then they like keep them going, like, you know, Rizzo the Rat and the shrimp Pepe and the bear, and whenever they do a new Muppets thing, they're always bringing in these new additions. So you think that like Lola would stick around for, Back in Action or whatever the next thing is going to be. I wonder if she'll be in Space Jam 2.
I do remember like there was like a girl bunny in Tiny Toons, which I watched as a kid, where they had like their young counterparts.
Right.
But yeah,
right.
I don't. I have speaking of adding new characters to this stuff, one of my friends and bandmates has a kid, and they watch like the new Muppet Babies that's on now. There's like a reboot series happening. I don't know, but they did that exactly what you said. They added like a new Muppet Baby character, and he just like despises this character. I was over at his house, and we had it on while his kid was there, and he was just like just so incensed by this character just being on screen.
He's like the Scrappy Doo of the Muppet Babies.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Ugh. I mean, I don't even know where to go from here.
Oh yeah, no.
We've kind of been talking about some puzzling aspects. Are there any like real like standout highlights kind of moments or elements for you?
I think I genuinely think that part in the beginning is good, where they're like kind of sucking up to him.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I know there are for sure some solid moments, even though like in the context of the movie, it's like, okay. I do like Wayne Knight like digging a hole to Looney Tune land.
Yeah.
He's like good in this crappy role he's in.
Yeah. I like that he's kind of like a human Looney Tune. He's, falling down and just digging a huge hole to get into like a tiny little hole, something that like a Toon would do.
And then like a lot of the jokes they do are bad. But I did feel like, similarly to when I was watching Back in Action, that sometimes the jokes and like the gags and the slapstick stuff does remind me of like some of the classic Looney Tunes stuff in a way where I'm like, okay, like some of that like rubbed off on it and is funny.
Yeah, I thought that the game could have been longer. I thought they should have got to the game sooner and then made more of a meal out of how they're going to like win this thing. Like we talked about like what's legal and what's not. And at some point it's okay for them to drive a Vespa around or like shoot somebody or like blow up the baskets if they had like played more with what was okay with Toon rules and what was off limits. But I did like those elements.
Yeah. I thought more so than like them like telling Michael Jordan, like, hey, you can do this stuff. Like, what if his inspiring speech was like, come on, guys, like, embrace your looniness.
Get loony, right. Yeah.
Oh, another gag that I really think is, like, I laugh out loud every time is when they're trying to make the game plan, and Sylvester cuts in, and he just starts describing how he wants to capture Tweety Bird.
Right.
I think that's so good. Like, that's just a good joke.
I like the montage where the other players are trying to get their mojo back.
Oh yeah, that's the one that's cool, but it's another one of those things where it's like in the context of this movie, like it it doesn't mean anything,
Yeah, there isn't any real reason to do it, but it's like if all the players are game, they're playing their parts pretty well, and it's shot like boom, boom, boom. It's kind of like it's shot like a montage of commercials, which I mean makes sense considering the director. But and then I like how it wraps up with the fortune teller like it seems like you've lost your powers and aliens have done this. They're like, nah, she's full of crap.
Yeah, I think sometimes movies will do this joke where like it's a ridiculous movie, and then the joke is they're explaining what the movie is.
Yeah, can you believe this?
And it's like that is usually like, come on, that's weak. But I thought in this scene it was like it worked. And I did think that montage, it's like maybe it's because there's no cartoon characters in it, and it, like you said, it's shot like a commercial, and it's got this good song, and it's got some sad moments and some fun, like there's some jokes in there too, but like it felt like in a vacuum, it's like kind of it's like got some, I don't want to say it's gritty, but it's got some like, it's got like an edge to it or something that's like, that's maybe giving it too much credit, but you know what I mean? Like it just feels like legitimate, if that makes sense.
That song, it has Barry White singing a former Cheech and Chong song called Basketball Jones, and Chris Rock's on that too. I guess you'd have to say that the soundtrack is probably a highlight of the movie. There's a lot of good tunes on there.
Just like liking goofy songs, like another highlight for me is like movie soundtracks. Like I love movie soundtracks, and this is like one of the top tier ones for me.
There's some crazy covers on it too. I mean, there's the Fly Like an Eagle by Seal, which isn't crazy really. It's actually, I think, supplanted in a lot of people's minds. Who did that song?
Steve Miller Band.
Yeah, Steve Miller. But I mean, there's I Believe I Can Fly, which I mean, of course,
right?
Probably enough said at this point.
Yeah.
There's also the Spin Doctors and Biz Markie do a That's the Way I Like It cover.
It's so good.
Yeah. And then there's like, you wouldn't even know, you have to listen to the soundtrack album to get this, but there's like a rap by Bugs Bunny.
Oh yeah. I wasn't thinking of that one, but yeah, that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's another rap song that's like the Monstars entrance in the movie.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's a music video for it too, and they're all in it, and it's like a nuts. It's like heavy hitters. It's like Busta Rhymes, Method Man, Cypress Hill Guy, Coolio, and LL Cool J.
Yeah.
And that song is legitimately awesome. And I remember in like Method Man's like verse in it, he's like making like Wu-Tang Clan references and stuff. I was like, it's so sick. It's such a good song.
LL Cool J, I haven't seen Back in Action, but if he hasn't done like a Looney Tunes tie-in, like he should, I feel like he would be like the perfect rapper.
Oh yeah.
Just, not much of an edge, expressive performer. I think that he would be good against the Looney Tunes.
I know he's crossed over with WWE before, so I think.
Oh really? Okay. Huh.
Yeah, I think he did like one of the intro like videos for a WrestleMania or two. Like he was like the introducer / narrator of the opening of WrestleMania video package.
What era was that? Like when was that?
Maybe like 10 years ago.
Okay.
I think it was like one of the ones like 28 or 29, like one of the Rock Cena ones in New York or whatever.
Oh, okay.
I think. Don't quote me on that, but
okay.
So yeah,
I'm always surprised to see like what music stars will sort of team up with WWE, because it's not always like who you think. And as far as like the Rock Cena goes, that's kind of when I was like getting out of WWE stuff. But before that, it was like, that Limp Bizkit song that they played forever for The Undertaker, and they did the Motorhead did the cover of the Triple H theme.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I love watching those performances even to this day. They're so ridiculous.
Yeah.
The last time I watched this movie before this, like the soundtrack was actually like the introduction to like us watching it. It was I was out of town with Annabelle, a band I'm in, and we were at a friend's house like before or after a show, and it was like right after they had gotten stuff on Record Store Day, and they had put the soundtrack out on vinyl. And so we were like, okay, let's listen to that. And we like listen, we're listening to it and like, oh, all these songs are so good. And then we're just like, let's watch Space Jam. And we did. And I didn't notice that time still that it was bad, because it's kind of the perfect movie to like watch with 5 other people and like laugh at,
Yeah, it goes down easy. Yeah. We talked about good stuff. Is there anything that you really wanted to point out? Like, okay, this is not great.
I mean, we kind of covered like the low. It's like, do you even want to like get into like criticizing the like, like doing like a feminist critique of Lola Bunny when it's like, it's just also just horrible, Yeah. It's not even like, there's nothing there really. That's,
no.
That's the worst thing in the movie, maybe. I don't know.
At this point, like, what are we, like, mid 90s, 96? I mean, points for representation, points for in 96, a girl coming in and going, hey boys, throw me the rock, and then like jamming it, and the boys going, whoa, she can play basketball. That like was feminism,
right?
For a large part.
For a
yeah, I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying like
no.
they thought that they were like, yeah, we're pretty enlightened, man.
It's so bad too because she has that interaction with Bugs, and then like literally the next time you see them interact is during the game, and they're like friends for real now, and then Bugs gets hurt and she's like, oh, Bugs, are you okay? You saved me. And it's like, what is happening?
Probably the worst part is like you said, she disappears and then comes back for the game. When if you want to really familiarize us with this new character, like have her go to Jordan's house to get the shorts, or put her in another scene.
Yeah, I think we're asking too much though.
For me, like speaking of going to Jordan's house, I didn't understand why the dog was shot almost exclusively against blue screen, and they made him look huge. It's like they were trying to tune the dog.
They give him like cartoon eyes too.
Yeah.
It's really weird. Yeah, I don't know.
Which I'd be down for, like in the world of the movie, if there was some kind of like explanation for it. Like, what if? Ooh, here's your premise. Like, what if the aliens going through the WB shield in the middle of the planet lets tuniness get out into the world, so things are being affected, right?
I think it was more of like maybe the dog just they didn't get a good dog actor.
Yeah, right. Sure.
Well, we'll just film a dog and put like angry eyes on him.
Or we couldn't get the house and the dog on the same day, so we just had to shoot stills of the house and then like comp the dog in later.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's probably the reason. One other thing I wanted to shout out was just that was like funny and good was all the basketball players like acting when they didn't have talent, like not just in that montage, but when they lose their talent or when Michael's watching him on the TV, like those, like it's really funny to see how people who are like probably some of the best people at something like act bad at it.
People very coordinated acting uncoordinated. Yeah,
it's very ridiculous. So it's not like, I don't know. It was very funny though.
Yeah, they did a good job at that. Let's go to our segment where we check on the state of the robot holocaust. I have a theory that you can tell within 30 seconds, maybe a few minutes, if the film that you're watching is going to be a bad film. If the film opens with excessive voiceover, if you've got overly long title cards, or if the film opens over water. You know that helicopter shot where you're panning over a body of water and then it tilts up and you see like a city line or whatever, and then it says RoboCop. Actually, RoboCop's a great movie, but it doesn't mean RoboCop. A previous guest of ours said if you have on-the-nose musical choices, and seeing the main character in the first scene, double those are also indicators. And I've also added recently, when you can see, this is a fairly recent thing with computer graphics, but when you can see the opening credits exist in the world of the film, that's an indicator that you're in for a bad time. So something like Panic Room is just the first thing I think of when it opens on these shots of the city and all the words are like sort of floating, like they're all in the movie.
Oh, I can't remember that. I haven't seen that movie in so long.
Well, now you know it's not a good movie.
Yeah.
So,
I would,
by those metrics, at least the metric of the on-the-nose choices of music and seeing the main character in the first scene, which particularly, that first scene, other than paying homage to Michael Jordan's father, it doesn't have anything to really do with the movie at all.
Yeah.
Except to maybe set up that we get that like young Michael does like baseball.
Right, yeah. I was thinking that this time around too. Because like, for me, that scene is like iconic in a way, but it was kind of, I'm kind of bummed that we did this episode because now it's been like shattered for me and that it's like actually meaningless.
Take it all back. Take it all back.
But
I don't know. Maybe in a way it's just at least a little bad. We can at least accept that.
But it is like, I think that scene could have existed in a good movie, I think.
Oh, sure.
I don't know. It's hard for me to separate that.
I'm sure if you look it up, there's like a Lifetime something or other, but I wonder when they'll make the definitive life story of Michael Jordan. Oh,
yeah, maybe not in his lifetime, you know.
Oh, probably not in his lifetime, because we need a resolution on some of the ongoing issues, like what's going on with the Hitler mustache.
Oh yeah, I forgot that he has that going on now.
I don't know if he's still doing it, but yeah, that was a bold choice. That's the choice of a guy that won 6 NBA titles.
Yeah, I don't think of Michael Jordan as like a person who exists in the world today.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Even when I lived at I had lived at a punk house for a while where it had a ton of people and we'd throw shows at our house, and
is that what a punk house is?
Yeah. Actually, some of the people from that house went and started another house that did shows, and they called it Moron Mountain.
Okay. All right.
But we had a VCR there, and we had like a large tape collection, and I started, because I would see them at every thrift store I went to, but like various Michael Jordan VHS tapes that were just like, you probably watched it in school or something, but it was like it would be like 30 minutes, and it would be like him talking about something inspirational, and then like dunk montage. And
okay.
So yeah,
I can see that. Yeah.
That's like how I think of him in the world today. Is like the 90s version of him.
Sure. Like, stop it, get some help, like PSAs and stuff like that.
Yeah, he was just like, well, I struggled with my grades, but then I focused, and then now look what I can do.
Right. Boy, do they even have those still, or is it just all YouTube videos now?
Yeah, it's for sure YouTube.
Just watch this, kids. Nyan Cat for 10 hours.
There's got to be like LeBron something for 10 hours.
LeBron jamming it for 10 hours.
Yeah.
So as far as the state of the robot holocaust, I'd say there's definitely robots on the way, but Bugs will dress up like a lady robot, and all the robots will go run program hubba hubba, and they'll all just run off a cliff or something.
That's like Bugs' greatest weapon, I think.
I wonder if he can still use that move in the woke 21st century.
Yeah, it does. It seems weird. It does seem weird now.
That's a different show. Let's talk about the pick of the patch, where we look at reviews of the film from the time. And as we said at the top of the show, this movie didn't get much love from critics, most of whom I'm assuming weren't millennials on the film's release. Lisa Schwartzbaum, who's a critic for Entertainment Weekly, said in 96, quote, "This mediocrity disguised as entertainment, this greed promoted as synergy, this, to paraphrase that seminal media study, Broadcast News, is what the devil looks like. It's Tasmanian, and it's coming to a multiplex near you."
Wow.
Lisa Schwartzbaum was my favorite critic at the time, but remember, I was like an angsty teen at the time, so...
Yeah,
I think a lot of her stuff is kind of overblown, but she's got a point.
I don't view I even after like all the things we discussed, I don't see this movie as like that cynical,
Yeah.
Even though like it is in pretty much every way, but it just seems so like lighthearted in most ways that it's like, I don't know. Whereas compared to like Back in Action, where it's like it feels like there's not even like an ounce of like, I don't know, niceness in the movie at all,
Though I have not seen it, but you're painting it as like just like a really like sardonic showbiz satire, I guess.
Yeah. It wants to be. It wants to be like a little bit more like, I don't know if it wants to be that cutting edge, but they're the whole time they're talking about their contracts and.
Yeah, I feel like the Muppets have gotten like that. More recently.
Oh yeah.
I didn't watch their last show that was on, which apparently like a lot of people said that like 30 Rock was a lot like the Muppet Show, and so, which I mean it was the old one, and so they made a Muppet Show that was like 30 Rock basically, which I don't think worked out very well.
Yeah, I didn't even check it out at all, but I did get, that's cuz I got like those similar vibes to it, where I was like, let's maybe like pretend that we enjoyed this, or like what we're making or whatever. So Space Jam has that. Maybe it's just because I was a kid when I watched it, but it has that illusion still to it, I think.
Yeah. Well, Todd McCarthy was writing for Variety in 96, and he was mixed but generally positive on the film. He said, quote, "Although it bounces off the rim a number of times," oh, Todd, "Space Jam finally goes through the hoop, Todd, come on, for the score. Cute, rambunctious, generally amusing rather than outright funny." He also wrote about Jordan, quote, "Unlike many athletes who have appeared as themselves on screen, Jordan comes off as relaxed, amiable, charismatic, and utterly like the man he has always seemed to be in his familiar sports context." Which I don't disagree that he is amiable. I agree. But he was a very different man in his commercials than on the court. You know, he was like this nice guy that's like, have a Coke, you know, in his commercials. And he was like ruthless on the court. Like he was, you know,
He's like a trash
shark.
talker, right? Yeah.
He was a trash talker. He was very competitive. It's what made him so good. But yeah, he was fierce on the court. And so I guess you couldn't bring that to like a kid's cartoon basketball movie. But yeah, a lot of times I felt like, especially when they were trying to put him up against the Tunes to do like comedy bits, it was like, okay, well, a commercial director is not going to be able to pull like a wacky performance out of him.
Yeah, he wasn't like very funny in the movie, but I would say it wasn't like I never thought like, wow, Michael Jordan is really horrible and like taking me, like, you know, he just did an okay job at like being himself, I guess.
I think I mentioned Chuck Jones before. He was not super happy about the film. Yeah, and mostly because of he didn't actually like Roger Rabbit either. I think it was just like the change in tone. Like he didn't like the cynical kind of modern tone to those films.
Well,
Which, if that's not your thing, I can see that.
Yeah, I guess I don't think like how would you describe classic Looney Tunes? It's not cynical at all, really. It's, well, I don't know.
Muggy, not like weather, but you know, like mugging, wise cracking, Deadpool, clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like, you know, don't take the bad guys are always people that take themselves too seriously.
Yeah.
They're the grumps, and so it's like showing up the grumps and trying to make people have a good time, and also eating a sentient bird.
So I guess it's like when that becomes like a huge, well, you know, when it becomes like a even bigger franchise, like it's like I think they understand that type of humor a little bit less, and it just comes off as, you know, cynical. Yeah. I will say that Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel, of course, gave it 2 thumbs up when it came out. Wow. That's kind of surprising to hear.
It was also, well, yeah, they were getting on in years in the mid-90s, so I think they were softening up a little bit. And it's also, it's a paper target, or it's a paper tiger or whatever. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to take chunks out of this? It's just clearly trying to entertain kids. And so I think maybe their take was like, what's the point?
Yeah.
What's the point of really shitting on Space Jam?
That's like on the last virtual
I'll take that challenge.
Theater we recorded. It was like we were like going through beat by beat the Pokemon movie, and I felt like after I recorded, I felt, because that was another one I loved as a kid, but I felt so dirty after recording it, because I was like, why did I have to like even say these opinions about what they did wrong with the Pokemon movie?
Here's something to make you feel better. Have you seen the Space Jam website?
Oh, it's like the old like 90s website, right?
Yes, it is. It is still up. I
Whoa.
did a little bit of research on it, and I wasn't able to find out too much. But yeah, the original website from 1995 or 6 is still up. Now it's hosted. I went so far as to like do a reverse lookup on the IP to see who hosts it.
Yeah.
And it's hosted on Amazon Web Services. So like, you know, I mean, I don't think like some dusty old server is still somehow running the Space Jam website. Like at this point, it became a kind of thing, and I think they're keeping it going as like a kind of joke or as an artifact. But if you go on there, they've got all the information. They have old QuickTime clips that are just like horrible quality of behind the scenes footage, and yeah, you can see the whole thing still.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and it is something to behold. It is, yeah, it's Planet B-Ball. There's a link you can click on called Planet B-Ball.
There's a distressing lack of animated GIFs, though.
Yeah, well, at that time, that would probably like, imagine trying to load that.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. They kept it going. It's a good logo.
Yeah, it's a great logo.
Looks so cool.
Usually at this point, at the end of the show, we ask why critics rejected this. And I think we know why generally. But the other thing we ask is, did it matter?
Definitely not. I think straight out the gate, because it was huge at the time, and it's now iconic. Like it's got that same sort of nostalgia that you walk into like a Hot Topic now, and it's like they got the Transformers shirts.
I don't, but I believe you.
For some reason, every time I pass one, I'm like, not because I've ever really liked the store, except when I was like a young angsty teen.
The emo, yeah, right.
But now I'm like, oh, I wonder. Like, I'm never gonna. Well, I do have a Space Jam shirt from Hot Topic, but typically, I'm like, what shirts do they have? I never buy any, but I'm like, I want to see what they have. Oh, there's a Dragon Ball Z shirt. Okay, cool.
Right.
That's like a good way for me to spend 10 minutes.
Hot Topic now sounds the same as when I used to go to Hot Topic. Like, it sounds like it hasn't changed at all. Maybe that's just the nostalgia cycle coming back.
Well, I remember for a while it was like super, like it was like mall goth, like Slipknot stuff.
Right.
And then when I was like into punk, like I think they expanded, like it was more like alternative music. And now it's like pop. It's like how everything is now, where it's like we sell Funko Pops,
Oh yeah.
We have Rick and Morty merchandise.
Yeah, they sell that at the dentist. I used to go there because this is really going to like place me in time, but I used to go there because it was a time when you couldn't order a X-Men t-shirt off of Amazon real easy, and yet the X-Men films hadn't been out yet, so there wasn't like this glut of like X-Men merchandise. But you can go to Hot Topic and get like a t-shirt with like a Jim Lee Cyclops on it.
Oh,
that's where you could get something like that.
That's cool.
It was before like everybody knew the name Wolverine.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that about the early Hot Topic.
Well,
but
they're trendsetters.
Well, I guess in the 90s, X-Men was kind of edgy, right?
It was huge on the comic side. Yeah, it hadn't quite made it to the screen though yet.
Yeah, so I could see Hot Topic being like, yeah, this is like cutting.
Oh, we're out ahead of this thing. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, as we've talked about, Space Jam 2 is currently in pre-production at Warner's, and LeBron James is the marquee star set for the sequel/reboot. They've talked about this, I think, since the day Space Jam came out, but it's finally going to get made now, in part because it's produced by Ryan Coogler.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. That's interesting.
And Justin Lin, who directed some of the Fast and Furious films, was originally attached to direct.
Originally.
But he's been replaced.
Damn it.
But a guy named Terrence Nance is currently slated to direct. He's primarily a director of shorts, but his first feature, 2012's An Oversimplification of Her Beauty, which would be a good title for one of your emo songs, is actually an animated film, so he might be a good choice. He's also a filmmaker of color as well. And Joe Pytka, no, he's a white guy.
Okay, so that sounds like, there's actually something like it's slightly more interesting to me now than and I was already interested, but not
already in.
Not because I thought, oh, this is going to be great,
Sonequa Martin Green has been cast as LeBron's wife, Savannah James, and Sean Bradley and Charles Barkley are slated to reprise their roles from the first film.
Oh, wow. This is going to be like they have some like really dark scene where he's like, I remember the day, and I remember 1996.
I did date Madonna again. I shouldn't have. Yeah.
I swore.
And this is for the children, but apparently Lil Pump is rumored to appear as himself.
Oh, okay. Well, they've got to do now where it's like they've got to have another soundtrack. I bet the soundtrack will be awesome.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That'll probably be the best part about the movie again.
Or not. It'll be a bunch of SoundCloud rappers covering like Wu-Tang songs or something.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which enthusiasm diminished. Well, what about let's talk about your final recommendation. Is this a masterpiece or a disaster piece?
Oh, I have to pick one. Oh, I'm going to say it as being a like a cartoon, real life sports crossover / commercial for a person's reintroduction to their sports career. It is a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece for sure.
Sometimes we add a monster piece to that, but this could be a monstar piece.
It's a monstar piece.
Yeah. I think for their incredibly low standards, and like the standards of how do we make this 2.5 minute commercial 88 minutes long? I mean, they accomplished exactly what they wanted to accomplish, right?
Yeah.
What I think is really interesting is how, to me, and I don't want to get all like master's thesis on it, but it like reads to me as like Jordan's way and our way of like collectively dealing with him deciding to be a baseball player, like in the middle of his career. Like it really was a shock. It really shook up a lot of people at that time. And so the really sad truth is the guy was burned out. The guy was grieving his dad. The guy had, an investigation coming up his ass. And so he was like, I'm going to do this instead. But it's like when you get away with something that you shouldn't have, like if you do something bad and like you think you're going to get caught and you're not, do you feel bad about it? Or do you just go right back in on it, and just like double down and create this weird, crazy alternate story that's a way to celebrate what happened instead of like just think about, he had a really bad time, in the mid 90s. It's this instead. And honestly, this is probably a better story.
Yeah, it's effective. Like I said, for me, like I didn't know all that stuff you said. And when I just think about like Michael Jordan's like life in the 90s and what happened, like take out the Looney Tunes stuff. And I'm like, yeah, like he went and played baseball and like people were like kind of funny about it to him. And then he came back and like, it's like, this was like a documentary for me,
The flaw in his plan is that he was Michael Jordan. Like if he could have, I don't think that he thought that it would be a circus. Like if he could have just hidden for a while and just took some cuts, as number 45 on a minor league field, maybe he would have got like what he was looking for, which was like, a little solace. But instead it became this total circus. And I think he just said, okay, screw it, I'm going to come back. And he literally came back. The Bulls were sucking like in the 95 season. They were not doing well. And he didn't go to like training camp or anything. Apparently, like on the set of the film, he played a lot of hoops. They built like a whole court for him. They called the Jordan Dome. But he basically just said like, I'm coming back. And the next day he just walked on to a game in the middle of the season and like, put up a bunch of points and everything was fine. It's like it never happened. Let's never talk about it again.
Dropped him off.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I meant, obviously that. And then, yeah.
Yeah. Cause now the narrative is the double three-peat,
right. And the next year after that, they went 1, 2, 3 again. So
wow.
It's just weird.
So yeah, it's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Long story short.
It's a Space Jam. All right. Well, that's it for this Space Jam. Thanks for joining us, listeners. If you want to let us know how you felt about this movie, you can tell us on Facebook at facebook.com/Craft Disservices. We're also on Twitter and catch this, it's at Craft Disservice, no S. We're on iTunes. You can search for Craft Disservices there. Subscribe, rate, and review us. It really helps us a lot. And we're, of course, on Google Podcasts, Stitcher, all that good stuff. Gooey, where can people find you online?
Let's see. I'm at Gooey Fame on Twitter. I think Pro Wrestling Required Viewing is at PWRV Podcast. It's kind of hard to remember these. Existence is Futile is EIF at EIF Pod. And because we couldn't get a better thing, it's at Virtual Theater X for Virtual Theater because the X sounds cool.
Yeah, that does sound cool. I like that.
It makes you think of Mega Man, like 20XX.
Right, yeah, right. 20XTX. Was there another thing that was virtual theater?
I think maybe it was like we couldn't fit Virtual Theater Pod and we couldn't do Virtual Theater. And we looked it up and I don't think it's anything of relevance. So like that does anything. And we couldn't get Virtual Theater 1. And we're like, well, we don't want to be Virtual Theater 2. Like that sounds bad.
Yeah, somebody wants to be Virtual Theater 2.
So I thought, let's throw a letter on there. And then we're like, what's the coolest letter you can do?
Z. No. X. Didn't the Mega Man series run into the problem where like they made Mega Man X, but then there was an actual like Mega Man X10?
Yeah. So
like the sequels came up to that point.
Right. Yeah. So it became, there was like X1, X2. Yeah. It's got a weird naming convention. It's kind of murky. It's like Fast and the Furious.
Right. Yeah. Right. They're going to run out of number-related word puns pretty soon.
Exactly.
Well, that sounds great. And the credits are rolling. This is Aaron for Gooey saying, a B. That's all, folks.